Hello and welcome to Irish Science Fiction. My name is Brian Sexton and you are about to listen to, if you hang around, chapter 50 of the 56 chapters of a story called Nancy Good Aim, the Space Ranger. So, a hen is a daw, is a tree, and away we go. This place is huge. Noted European Space Agency mission specialist Nancy McGinley. She was seated at the controls of a Jupiterian flying vehicle known as a Colump when she noted it. The only one that could have heard her note it was European Space Agency mission specialist Bart McMorrow, who was with her in the large, mostly empty cabin that Nancy was seated in. He didn't hear her. He was busy pacing about the cabin. He'd walked from the damaged rear wall and window and around to the windows in each of the four walls to look out and was now standing to the right of where Nancy was seated. Below them, the surface of Jupiter rolled slowly along. They were flying over a vast area of grey, barren, rocky terrain, which was bordered on one side by ocean and cloud. They were flying low enough to make out any change in terrain, but too high to see individual settlements or any constructions on the surface. "I don't know how we're going to find where we're going," continued Nancy. "Can you remember anything specific about the destination, Bart?" "Jerry Staunton is a bollocks," replied Bart. "What do you think of the lunch we had?" he added. Nancy took her gaze and her concentration from the controls and turned to face Bart. He was looking out the window and down onto the rocky terrain below. "That looks familiar," he said. "I think that's where the lads parked the San Laika too. Did you know they had a bar on there? The Schleeveens. How well they wouldn't have mentioned that back at Carew Spaceport. I'm telling you, Nancy, it's an old boys club. See if the likes of you or me wanted a pint to be, 'Oh God, no, don't be crazy. You can't be drinking porter in outer space.' But behind the scenes, they've got a fully stocked bar and a dartboard in the other module." Nancy scanned the rocky ground below. The sun was bright and there were no clouds over the vast expanse of grey rock. In theory, a metallic object would reflect its rays. "Can you be sure?" asked Nancy. "What do you mean, can you be sure? Of course I can be sure. Sure wasn't I in it? I was drinking with Owen and Francie and everything. Not that pair are much crack. I tell you something else. I bet that gobshite Staunton knew full well about it and said nothing. The nodding dog that he is. Mission Control was probably like, 'Here, Staunton, you're a simpleton. You won't mind if your lot have to sit stone cold sober in a spacecraft for 6 months. Sure you won't. Don't tell your crew the other spacecraft has a bar. Sure you won't.' And he was like, 'Oh God, no. Sure I don't need a bar. My favourite thing is staring at the walls and listening to myself. I'll make sure Nancy and Bart spend the journey doing the same.'" "I mean," said Nancy, "are you sure the surface below is similar terrain to where you made contact with the others? Where you saw the San Laika too? We have a lot of ground to search. I think I can get this thing to descend and circle that expanse of rock. What makes you sure?" "I can feel it in me bones," said Bart. Nancy said nothing for several minutes. Her hands instinctively operated the levers in front of the sole seat in the cabin. This caused the vehicle to descend until several worn paths were visible, snaking their way through the otherwise barren terrain. Her eyes followed the routes the paths took. "It's strange, Bart," she said finally. "I've the same feeling. I know I can operate this thing. I just know it. That's it. Nothing more. A feeling. And it's like, well, that's what Earth is to me now. Just a feeling." Bart walked to the rear of the craft, the part that was exposed to the elements, and looked down. "I mean," continued Nancy, "I know I had a family back on Earth, but I just can't seem to remember. It's just a feeling. Do you think maybe we didn't make the landing on Mars?" Bart half turned. "Hard to know, Nancy. I'm not from round here, but there's something familiar about the... Oh wait, yeah, see the hills over in the distance?" "Do you think, Bart," continued Nancy, "do you think we're dead? I mean, you just said you could feel we were close to the second module. How could that be possible?" "I was being sarcastic, Nancy. I just didn't want to have to go into it with you. Those paths are like the ones I was in the way back earlier in the story, and those hills are familiar, and the distance from the ocean. It all stacks up with where I ended up that time you all left me for dead. Can you make this thing fly over a coastline? See if we go up and down along it. We should hit that port I was at before. The place that hippie book with the vomiting wife was on about in chapter 46. "But Bart," continued Nancy, "do you think we're dead?" "Who, me or you?" "Both of us. And Commander Staunton. That maybe we didn't survive the landing. I mean, we lost all contact with Control the minute we hit the plasma." "That doesn't surprise me, Nancy. Control must have known we'd find out about the stuff they had on San Laika too sooner or later. Staunton can barely hold his own piss. It's a wonder he kept quiet about it the whole way to Mars. The Sleeveen." "I'm not talking about that, Bart. I mean, this here, what we're doing, it's all, well, it just seems strange." "Hang on, Nancy, wait till I get over to you," said Bart. He then walked to 15 metres from the damaged rear of the cabin to where Nancy was seated at the controls. "Say that to me again." "Do you think maybe we didn't survive that we're not actually on Jupiter. Jesus, Nancy, did you eat some more of them berries or something? What do you mean, not on Jupiter? Where do you think we ended up? Where did you go to school? Look out the window. Where do you think this is? County Donegal or something? Nancy didn't reply. She looked out the window as the coastline came into sharper view. She could make out several bright metallic objects making their way along the paths. They were not rolling, but walking. Right, she said finally. What do you think those things are, Bart? The metal objects moving along the trails? Don't try to change the subject, Nancy. You said you wanted to know what I think about this whole thing. Well, here it is, in the form of a metaphor. Why a metaphor? It's just, sometimes it's easier to explain things as things that are like other things that you may be more familiar with. You know, like an ant carrying an apple up a mountain. What? Just listen, will you, Nancy, said Bart. He squatted on the ground in front of where Nancy was facing so that his hunched body blocked her view of the coastline. Are you listening? He asked. Yes, said Nancy quietly. Good. Because in the metaphor there were two astronauts. Let's call them Terry and Jemima. And they were on a spacecraft with a thing called a Cepahlophalod on their way from Saturn to, let's say, Neptune. So anyway, this Cepahlophalod was an ugly sort of Cepahlophalod. You know, really, really ugly. Scary ugly. Like, it'd scare the shit out of you even if you weren't easily scared. Because of, well, instead of eyeballs, it had two pigs' arses. And then between them, instead of a nose, was the skull of a dead badger. And it had giant fangs for teeth and a long bony jaw that stuck out like a needle and split into 18 prongs whenever the Cepahlophalod talked. You know, I haven't thought about Earth since we landed on Mars, muttered Nancy. Listen, will you, Nancy? I'm trying to explain, said Bart. So anyways, there was no way the Cepahlophalod could ever have soup for its lunch. Okay, said Nancy. So do you see what I'm getting at? No, said Nancy. Commander Staunton is a bollocks. What? It's a metaphor, Nancy. Terry and Jemima ended up stuck on Neptune because the Cepahlophalod made a mess of landing and then buggered off with the spacecraft. So what do you think? What do I think about what? About what Terry and Jemima did to get home. Like, Saturn's a good distance from Neptune. You know yourself. You're talking about close to 2 billion miles. That's a long way to go with the Cepahlophalod stuck in the spacecraft with you, you know? One that has already made a pig's ear of a landing and disappeared off with the spacecraft on them. So, Terry and Jemima had this big long dose of mission just to find the craft. I don't follow. So Terry and Jemima got the Cepahlophalod to stay behind on Neptune, you know, for science purposes or whatever. What? Ah, come on, Nancy. What I'm saying is that Commander Staunton is like the Cepahlophalod in the story of Terry and Jemima's trip from Saturn to Neptune. You know, one big ugly stupid waste of space. So what? So what do you think? We leave Staunton here on Jupiter. Sure, the bollocks fits right in anyway. We can tell Control he wanted to stay and open up a language school, teaching Jupiterians to talk like a dork or whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm saying we leave him. We both know he'd do the same to us if he had the chops for a single-handed spaceflight. I don't know, Bart. Whatever. Don't tell him I said that. You can tell him I think he's a prick, but leaving him for dead in outer space is fairly hardcore. You know, even if he is a bollocks. Anyway, that's just what I think. And it was you that asked, Nancy. You shouldn't go asking about things if you don't want to hear the answer. Bart stood up and walked over to the front window of the cabin and peered out at the ground below. It was stupid for the locals to make all those paths going nowhere. No wonder nobody is using them, he noted. Bart, you're in the way. I can't see, said Nancy. When Bart stood aside, Nancy once more looked down at the grey barren landscape that stretched from the far distant hills to the coast. If she'd been from Jupiter, she would have immediately recognised the canclonic expanse and the network of paths created by the Gabelodians that once lived there, and known it was a place Jupiterians now avoided, having generally shunned magic and turned to the more mundane occupations of warehousing and shipping spontalagers and edible sea creatures on the ocean shore, and making neatly arranged large warehouses in rows next to the harbour, in a seaside settlement known as Claspa-Broan. What's that there? Asked Nancy. Warehouses. Is that where you were earlier in the story, Bart? You mean after you abandoned me and went off gallivanting with your Jupiterian buddies? You stormed off yourself, Bart. There was no abandoning to it. Is that where you were? I dunno. Can you take this thing down along the shore? Nancy worked the levers and the clump responded. It dropped and dropped until it skimmed the surface of the ocean at a distance of about 1 kilometre parallel to the shore. That's the buck, said Bart. The "that's the buck" was a giant statue erected on a plinth that emerged from the water. The statue was a humanoid in a Hawaiian shirt, sandals, shorts and sunglasses holding a suitcase. 4 more similarly sized statues flanked either side of it at regular intervals along a line from the shore out to sea. He must have been going on his holidays when they made that one, noted Bart. What a dork. Although, to be fair, his buddies are even bigger dorks for making it. Says a lot about the inside of their heads if that's what they spend their time at around here. Yeah, this is the place I was earlier. Great, noted Nancy. What do you mean, great? Well, we're in the right place. How is that great? I'd have called it average, or, fine. Like, it's not going to be going down in the history of the solar system. 2 people found a place they were looking for after looking for it. Fantastic. Great. Come on now, Nancy. And anyway, are we not supposed to fetch the book? We are. It's in the ocean. Somewhere, replied Nancy. Great, muttered Bart. And that was it for the early evening of the 9th day of the first human mission to another planet. An underground army of sorts. European Space Agency Mission Specialist Nancy Goodame McGinley, European Space Agency Mission Specialist Bart McMorrow, a Colump, warehouses, and the last remaining copy of the Book of Bonglin adrift on the Sea of Uncertainty on Jupiter. Okay, thank you very much if you listened to that. There'll be another one, hopefully, next week or a week and a half, which is in the future or past, depending when you were listening to this. But once again, thank you for tuning in and chat to you soon.